The Bitcoin election volatility is already in full effect. Today's presidential election marks a historic time for the future of crypto. Will we have Trump, a crypto-friendly president, or will we have Kamala, the president to end the bull market? In today's quick update, I will be giving you crucial insights on how to navigate these next few volatile days, and I will be sharing exactly what I plan to do. Let's get right into it. In yesterday's update, I warned you that we could be tapping the 66.8K mark to collect all that liquidity before a next move up. Now we are already above $69,000 as Trump's lead extends into the election. In fact, we wicked all the way up to over $70,000 before seeing a sharp pullback in the price of Bitcoin. If we look on a smaller time frame, we can see that there is indeed a lot of volatility exactly as expected, and I think this volatility will only increase within the upcoming days. So you definitely need to be careful with trading during these times. Instead of immediately trying to predict short-term price movements, I will be going back to my initial prediction that I was sharing with you across the past few videos, and that was the fact that if Bitcoin closed the week below 70K and below 69K, I would in fact remain bearish. Now, again, we did close the week below the 69K mark. And in my opinion, anything that happens with this election will likely fall back within the 50 to 70K range before we sustainably move to all-time highs. Price action is king. And as I mentioned, the weekly close was ugly. Now, if we go into Polymarket, we can see that yesterday, around the time that we saw a sharp sell-off in the market towards 66.8K, Kamala started gaining ground on Trump. But now, on election day, we can see that Trump and Kamala started going their separate ways on this chart. Trump continuing to gain more ground with now a 63% chance of winning and Kamala at 37%. So what does this mean in terms of how the market will perform? A lot of people seem to think that if Trump is elected, we will just explode to the upside, but I personally have different thoughts after seeing what everyone is saying on crypto Twitter. To be frank, the overall sentiment, as far as I can tell, is overwhelmingly bullish. And having been in the market since around 2018, I can tell you that when market participants are overly bullish, it is a time to be cautious. Now, let me just show you the ETF data. So yesterday, we can see that essentially every single Bitcoin ETF saw sharp sell-offs except for BlackRock, who seem to continue to accumulate Bitcoin. Now, I think this is part of a larger plan where they just want to have more power on Bitcoin and more control on how it moves. But the rest of the ETFs sold a ton of Bitcoin, leading to over $500 million in outflows, which is the second largest outflow in Bitcoin ETF history. Now, let me just show you a little snippet from yesterday's video where I discussed my predictions in terms of where the price of Bitcoin could be headed. See that there are some liquidations right above the $69,000, $69,500 mark. However, a bunch of you degens have been longing Bitcoin right here as well. And we can tell that there's over hundreds of millions of dollars here in liquidations right below the 68K mark. At the time of recording, we are currently at 68,300. And so I hope this isn't you at the current moment, but in my opinion, we will be grabbing all this liquidity here as well. So that's exactly what happened. We went down and we grabbed that liquidity to the downside. And now we are moving up and grabbing all the liquidity to the upside. The market makers have a way of playing with us. And this is why I told you to exercise caution with trading around this time frame. Because of the weekly close below 69K, my bias was to still be bearish, although I am fully expecting insane volatility, as I've been mentioning. And so it would not surprise me if we went up and tapped near the all-time highs, because if I pull up the liquidation heat map on a 1 week time frame, we can see that there is tons of liquidity above where we're currently at the 70K mark. So As of 70,500 onwards, there is a ton of liquidity, and that goes all the way up to the previous all-time high around $73,600. So it's very likely, in my opinion, that we grab at the very least the liquidity up to 72K, and most probably the liquidity all the way up to the previous all-time highs before seeing a correction. Now, I know it might sound crazy that I'm saying I'm still expecting further downside for Bitcoin, but the reality is we closed the week back inside my target range, and this is why I think so. I'm still accumulating spot Bitcoin whenever we go below the $68,000 mark, because for the long term, it simply won't matter. But in the short term, I still believe that there is a high probability that we go and tap into this liquidity around the $61,000 mark. Now, the market does have a way of humbling us all, so I could be wrong here and we might just explode to new all-time highs. But if I had to make a prediction, it would be that we would eventually tap into this huge cluster of liquidity at some point in the coming weeks. So the elections. The perception of Trump is that he is a lot more crypto friendly. And so this is potentially why we are already seeing that the markets have started to pump in preparation for him to be the winner. Now, this is fine and marks huge opportunities if you're a trader to be able to trade this volatility. But if you're someone who's trading medium to long term, it simply won't matter because, in my opinion, we will see way higher highs for Bitcoin in this bull market, in particular in 2025. And why might I say this? Well, if you look at the historical price performance of Bitcoin after the election, to put it simply, the trajectory is up. If we have a look here at this chart, we can see that in 2016, we kind of stayed flat until we eventually exploded into the next year after the election. Then, if we have a look at 2020, we did indeed see a little bit of a sell-off before really taking off into the end of the year. And 2024, to no surprise, we are around the same point in the cycle as these other periods. And so we are not necessarily in front, we are not necessarily behind, but we are right where we need to be for Bitcoin to have an explosive 2025. Again, my bias here is that we might not see a dip similar to 2020 because that was a pandemic-induced dip, but we might still see a smaller, more shallow one before taking off into the new year. So I've shared my outlook on the end of the year into 2025 and how I think it will generally be bullish in 2025. But what would make me flip bullish in the short term? Obviously, as I mentioned, my bias was a little bit more bearish because of this gravestone doji candle on the weekly. But if this week's candle closes like this, or even above the 70K mark, I may have to quickly shift my bias to more bullish. However, we won't really know this until the end of the week. And so I am still of the opinion that we can go as high as the previous week's wick and still come down. If this volatility is a surprise to you, well, welcome to crypto. Two last things that I need to share with you because they echo my thoughts to a T. If we look at Nebraskan Gunner's profile, this is what he said on Twitter. Everyone on my feed seems collectively convinced that no matter the outcome of the election, the crypto market will gigapump. I don't like it when everyone is collectively convinced of the same idea. Please make more bearish posts. Please. To be quite frank, these are my exact thoughts. Just go on your Twitter timeline and have a look. How many people are posting very bullish outlooks and how many people are posting more bearish outlooks? On my feed, at least, the percentage of bulls comes out to 80% at the bare minimum. And so you do need to exercise caution because if you blindly believe the bullish case, you could put yourself in a lot of trouble if the market starts tanking and you're in open positions. The way to mitigate this, though, is to always have a very healthy spot bag. So although my bias is a little bit more bearish for the time being, I still have a healthy amount of Bitcoin in case I'm proven wrong and the price starts to skyrocket. But when it comes to short-term trading, particularly with leverage, this is a time where you want to be extra careful. And that brings this quick update to a close. So what are the things to look out for? Well, last week we closed a gravestone doji candle, which is historically a very bearish sign. But with all the Trump hype, as he continues to extend his lead, it seems very likely that he could be a winner, and people are getting extremely excited. This is reflected in the price of Bitcoin, as we went from $68,500 all the way up to tagging 70K in just a couple hours. Despite this, I would urge you to be a little bit more cautious, as the markets are experiencing a ton of volatility. This is exactly how the market makers are able to wreck both people that are shorting Bitcoin and longing Bitcoin. So make sure that you are protecting your capital. When people are screaming that things are bullish at the top of their lungs, it is usually a sign to ease off the gas a little bit and take a broader look, analyze what people are saying, analyze what the market is giving you, and make an educated decision. Because if you blindly follow people that are bullish or even bearish for that case, it can cause you a lot of troubles. Until Bitcoin has a confirmed close above 70K, I will be sitting back and watching the markets as they unfold. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.